What is going on, guys? It is Stocks Noah back at again with another video. Today we're going to be talking about Micron and having this insane run up today. They just exploded 20% and now are in the $1 trillion market cap club. All right, they are one of the most valued companies in the entire world currently. Absolutely insane. I'm going to tell you guys everything that you may have missed, some reasons why they went up today, and why I believe they could actually, continue to rise. That being said, guys, I have just released my first ever memo on my Substack page. This right here is the Intel bull thesis. I give you guys a little sneak peek up until, the first pillar right here. So there's 6 pillars I talk about, the 6 most material reasons why I believe Intel can have a continued surge. So yeah, honestly, guys, just go check that out yourself. Obviously, I'm still uploading to the Daily Wire every day. So if you're interested in, looking at, daily trades you can potentially take, all that kind of stuff, not financial advice by any means. It's not a solicitation, Go take a look at that. And obviously, with my Substack, you have to sign up through your email, and you can get these as well. So yeah, that's just like a little food for thought. I just wanted to, tell you that. I'm really excited to, give that to you guys. I've been working on it for a while. And also go follow me on X as well. We post every day to that. But without further ado, let's just jump right into the video because this is what you guys came here and your time is valuable. So to begin, here is the main catalyst that brought, Micron up. As you can tell here, a UBS analyst, Timothy Arcuri, probably butchered that, but Timothy Arcuri tripled his price target on Micron. Okay, it went from $535 to $1,625 a share. That's how much he increased his thing, all right? So it's absolutely an insane price hike, and now that is by far the most bullish call on Wall Street that I've seen, okay? And it obviously sent the shares ripping from Micron, up 19.3% on the day. I think it was just over $160 intraday as well. Let me just pull up their chart here. Absolutely insane. And obviously, DRAM had a crazy run-up. Referencing back to my YouTube channel, actually, I actually talked about this a while back, just over a month and a half ago. I released my deep dive on Micron and SanDisk and my deep dive explaining SK Hynix's Q1 earnings. And then, just 4 weeks ago, the Agentic AI really hammering in on the memory thesis. I told you guys buy DRAM at $30. I told you guys buy Micron at 400 in those videos, right? And as you can see, you would have doubled your money. Now remember, this is not financial advice, it's not personal, but just a little food for thought. I give away all that sauce for free on my channel, so if you're not subscribed, make sure you subscribe. But yeah, as we know, the UBS analyst, he raised his price target like absolutely crazy, tripled it. But here's the part that actually matters, ladies and gentlemen. It's not the number, it's the framing, okay? So the analyst, his entire thesis was that Micron should no longer be valued as a cyclical memory company. He reframed it as, quote, an AI native infrastructure giant. Absolutely insane. His argument was that long-term supply agreements already cover 60 to 70% of industry servers' DDR5 volumes, or, DRAM volumes. And that gives Micron, kind of NVIDIA-like earnings visibility all the way until 2029, right? Read that again, guys. NVIDIA-like earnings visibility. That's absolutely insane. And that is, the biggest framing shift in the stock since the AI trade started. Referencing back once again to some previous videos, about a week ago, actually, in one of the videos I uploaded, I actually was talking about how I personally believe, sorry, I'm getting a little call here, sorry if you guys heard that, but I was under the impression that, I think Micron and these, HBM companies are going to stop being viewed as cyclical rise and bust companies, very cyclical kind of, rises in the stock price and dips down, right? When we started this run up, it was about 70 billion in market cap, now it's $1 trillion. The issue with that is, as we know, NAND storage, memory, DDR5, all that kind of stuff that Micron really, benefits from, in SanDisk as well. That's all cyclical, right? They have extreme price increases and they get oversupplied and then it crashes because it's commoditized. I'm under the impression that high bandwidth memory won't be like that. I think eventually it's going to get a repricing to the point where people start to think it's actually a specialty product and not a commodity, all right? But that is the topic for another video. And that, I believe, is one of the framings that, the UBS analyst was actually insinuating. He didn't overtly say it, but he was insinuating it. But there was also another tailwind to add on to that as well that caused it to go up. President Trump actually came out and said today, he publicly praised the company, or not today, rather, actually at a rally on Friday, I believe, for what he called it, hundreds of billions of U.S. investments, into the memory sector in Micron, which gave it, political wind, heading into Monday's holiday and Tuesday's open. It was just Memorial Weekend, I believe. Shout out to all you Americans watching my videos. So we've kind of got, a monster sell side upgrade from the UBS analyst that I was talking about, Timothy Arcuri. And, the tailwind, the presidential tailwind as well. and a market that's already starving for AI exposure. So it's absolutely insane. And that right there, coupling all together, gives you your 19 to 20% day move. Now, why does this connect to the super cycle thesis that I've been hammering home for a while now? Okay, let's zoom out. Well, we got to look at the whole stack here to make sure it's all intact. Because if you've been watching my channel, none of this should actually be a surprise to you. We've been talking about this for like a while now, weeks, maybe just under 2 months. About how the AI supercycle isn't just an NVIDIA story, it's a memory and packaging story as well as a CPU story, and that we've been seeing. We just want to kind of a little sidetrack here. I want to take a look at AMD. AMD's had a monster run up. I actually called for AMD in my trade wire to hit 500, and look at that today, 505. Wow, beautiful, beautiful. But ladies and gentlemen, here's a framework that we built on this channel here, right? So, every NVIDIA GPU, this might be boring to those who watch it, but we got to go back. Every NVIDIA GPU, every single Blackwell, every Vera Rubin chip rolling off the line needs HBM, needs high bandwidth memory, right? Stacked right onto it or right next to it. Micron is one of the only 3 companies on Earth that makes HBM at scale, okay? There are 2 others, okay? SK Hynix and Samsung. Mind you, that's it. There's no 4th player. And earlier this year, Micron went into high volume production of HBM4, specifically designed for NVIDIA's Vera Rubin platform. That is the chip that's going to, power the next generation of frontier AI training clusters, right? So that is the next big thing, and Micron is positioning itself to benefit greatly from that. Now, remember the thesis we laid out around ARM and SK Hynix a few videos back? The core insight was that, capacity is now the binding constraint in this cycle, not demand. HBM is sold out through 2026 across the entire industry. Advanced packaging at TSMC is sold out. Leading edge logic is sold out. Going to lead to more people turning to Intel and EMIB, which is their advanced packaging software, which is going to rival CoWoS, right? When you're supply constraint, instead of demand constraint, super cycles don't end, they extend. That's how you have to think about it. Order books stretch out, pricing power persists, and earnings visibility goes from quarters to years. And we're seeing this happen. The DRAM ETF absolutely exploding, Micron exploding. All this is kind of playing out exactly how we've been talking about it on this channel for a while. And that is exactly what UBS just validated today with what the analysts reiterated, right? Excuse me. When, the analyst says, 60 to 70% of server DDR5 is already locked into long-term supply agreements through 2029, that should absolutely put to sleep the old memory narrative that was going around about it being cyclical and, rise and bust, right? The new story is these companies, like Micron in particular, has locked in volume, locked in pricing, and locked in multi-year contracts, which acts more like a specialty product than a commodity, right? And there's another piece to this as well, ladies and gentlemen. We talked about how SK Hynix and, the Intel collaboration on, technological advancements in advanced packaging was opening up new bottleneck relief, okay? That's a big thing. But the takeaway was that, even with the new capacity coming online, demand is so far ahead of supply that, the next 2 to 3 years are already spoken for, right? They're already filled up. Today, and with today's move from Micron especially, it's the market finally pricing all of that in, I believe, right? Now, watch the read across, okay? AMD was up about, how much today? It was up about, 7.5%? Yes, 7.8%. On the same session. Redwire, the AI adjacent infrastructure name, was up over 25%. Let me go take a look at that one really quickly. Redwire, how much were they up today? Yeah, just over 25%. The NASDAQ hit a record above 30,000. This isn't a one-stock story, ladies and gentlemen. This isn't just Micron having a great day. It's money circulating once again into hardware. We saw slowly money start pulling out of hardware when there was a whole, the Iran and U.S. war inflation risk, to the upside with, inflation, potentially. Is there going to be rise in interest rates? Because that would absolutely kill, the stock market rally. That would really put the nail in the coffin. But we got big easement of that over the weekend with talk going from Trump. That was great. Kind of put everyone's mind at rest there. So, it led to this rally. And we're starting to see money circulate away from, household names like ServiceNow, Intuit, Microsoft, and that software sector that I believe will boom eventually. But we saw it slowly get back into the hardware trade, right? We were all waiting for it. We're all waiting for money to circulate back in the hardware trade. And this is the reason, okay? And coupled with, like I said, the taco from Trump on the Iran war, potentially peace coming in, which is going to be great. And also, the UBS analyst reiterating on Micron, kind of saying, he basically said it's it's a specialty product, and it's a this is not cyclical any longer, right? So that's perfect. But like I was saying, look at the read across. Everything kind of was going through the roof today. It's not just a one stock story, ladies and gentlemen. The market's finally moving from AI equals Nvidia, right? Training only Nvidia to AI equals the whole picks and shovels stack, right? Like the thing I was showing you here. It equals all of this, Intel, TSMC, and eventually, software. But we're not at that level yet. But, we're also seeing, love go into Google, Meta, Amazon, all those great companies as well. So it's a mixture of a few things, right? And, Micron kind of just became, the poster child for today because it had such a huge run up and everyone's focused on Micron in particular. But it's the same story. It's just, the analysts reiterated on Micron, which is great. So this raises the question, and I know a lot of you are wondering, can it keep running? And I might be a little bit more bullish than others, and this is just a little price action of the stock here. We saw about in June, it was about under 100, right? And then it had this huge run up over the last 12 months, up to just be under $1,000, which on my channel I've been calling for 1,000 as well. Anyways, just thought I should share that with you. But can it keep running? And I'm going to give you the bull case, in 4 parts here, as you can see on screen. By the way, guys, Claude made this for me with these things here. I just punched into Claude. I'm like, hey, dude, these are the points I want to talk about. Make me some visuals. Because, I don't know if you guys can tell. I have trouble finding some visuals. I don't really know what to put on screen here. But, yeah, I just asked him, dude, make me some freaking visuals. And he does it for me now. So, kudos to Anthropic, man. That's going to be crazy. Also, Anthropic and OpenAI are IPOing this year. I'm going to make a video on that, which I think can, be the top of the market. But anyways, now let's be bullish here for a bit. Bullish on Micron. Firstly, can it keep running? Yes, because of HBM pricing. As we see on screen here, HBM4, all these companies have pricing power. It's being sold at a premium that we have never seen in the history of memory before. Like I mentioned, it was very cyclical. It was commodity. So they had commodity-like margins, right? We're never seen this before. Micron's gross margin on the product they're selling, it's not like memory of the past gross margins. They're closer to logic gross margins, meaning it's closer to specialty product gross margins. And as HBM4 ramps through the rest of 2026, every additional unit shipped is high margin revenue going straight to the bottom line, ladies and gentlemen. Secondly, on screen here, they have locked in demand. The customer concentration is actually a feature, not a bug right now, okay? Let me preface. NVIDIA, the hyperscalers, OpenAI, Anthropic, all these customers are signing, multi-year, multi-billion-dollar supply agreements with Micron because they cannot afford to be short of memory. This whole switch to inference and agentic AI, guys, on this channel, I've been reiterating, you need more memory. That's why we're seeing AMD's chips start to be produced with, I believe it's, 50% more memory than the leading competitor, aka NVIDIA. So we can see how that can work, and we're seeing money slowly start circulating because I think Helios racks, paired with their Venice chips, are going to sell a lot better than what people are predicting. Anyways, for inference and agentic AI, you need more NAND, you need more HBM. That's why DRAM, MU, SK Hynix, Samsung, and SanDisk have been on this crazy jolly run-up, and it's going to continue because it's no stop in sight. Okay? These guys are in multi-billion-dollar year agreements, locked up until 2029 minimum. And if you're building a $100 billion data center, right, like these hyperscalers are and these major companies are, the last thing you want is to be the company that didn't lock in high bandwidth memory. And that's why these agreements keep getting longer dated, long-term, and bigger for more. The third reason is geographically speaking. Micron is the only U.S. memory-based player. So in other words, you can refer to them as a U.S. memory champion, right? That's what I'm going to start calling them as, the champion of the United States for memory. They're building new fabs in Idaho, New York, Virginia, and, they just expanded into Singapore and India as well. And, in a world of export controls and, CHIPS Act, the CHIPS Act money is kind of flowing in, and, the Made in America whole narrative that the administration is pushing. These are being tailwinds for, these American-based companies. I've been saying it for the likes of Intel. I've been saying it now for the likes of Micron, right? These are tailwinds. And, being headquartered in Boise instead of Seoul is suddenly worth a multiple premium it would never used to be worth before, right? So being headquartered in the United States, as opposed to South Korea, like, SK Hynix and Samsung are, it adds a premium price to the stock you're paying for because, this whole push, everyone's pushing towards America First production, right? So that's why we're seeing money slowly start circulating into, American-based companies that have American-based production capacity. Micron being one of them, right? So that's another reason why I think this can continuously go. Fourth, and this is one actually a lot of people miss, DRAM, not just high bandwidth memory. Server DDR5 is what runs in every single AI training and inference rack alongside the high bandwidth memory. AI servers use roughly 8 times the DRAM content of a normal server, okay? And that's a step function increase in demand for Micron's core business on top of high bandwidth memory. So even if high bandwidth memory even if high bandwidth memory and the growth of that, stagnates or modulates in a sense, the base DRAM business is going through its own super cycle. So they're always going to have that, okay? Now, in my humble opinion, I don't think HBM is going anywhere. We're not seeing the likes of CapEx slow down. We're only seeing memory increase. I saw this interesting post on Twitter of the blueprint of OpenAI's new custom silicon ASIC they want to make. Please go look at that blueprint, ladies and gentlemen. The amount of memory you need that they want for is absolutely insane. You can't have that much memory, stacked. You can only fit so much, which is why you need photonics and fiber optics to transfer the data and have it be able to sit off, the wafer to allow the transfer, because you can't transfer it with copper wire if it's off a few inches away. But we're going to need more memory. We're going to get to that point, and that's why we're seeing Marvell rip. I talked about it in my last video, and they're up over $20 to $25 per share. If you're in my daily trade wire, I called them at $149 as well. Just another thing, not a solicitation by any means, right? But, just a little food for thought with that one. So, yeah, I don't think HBM is going anywhere, and these 4 are definitely major tailwinds as to why I think Micron can still keep running. Now, I'm not here to pump bags at all. If you know my channel, I don't do that. At $1 trillion valuation, you can't ignore the risks, because there are some. So here is the slight bear case. Number one, as you can see on screen, and this is the big one, the peak earnings trap. Memory is historically the most cyclical business in semis. When the cycle eventually turns, it turns very hard. Okay, there's never been a time in history where it hasn't turned, and there's never been a time where it hasn't been a rough turn. The classic memory peak earnings setup is, low forward PE, strong consensus, everyone's bullish, and then 18 months later, capacity catches up to demand and earnings get cut in half. The question is not whether that happens, it's kind of when, right? And, the bull case is that, the structural AI demand pushes that turn to 2029. The bear case is that it shows up in late 2027. Now, to rebuke that a little bit, because I didn't write this down in my notes, I just kind of want to freestyle this part a little bit. I don't actually think there's as big of a cyclical shutdown that people are projecting. And I think this is the first step with the UBS reiteration of many. I think we're going to see a lot of people kind of reframing Micron and reframing the entire HBM market as not cyclical any longer. The moment people start referring to it as, specialty, that's when we're going to start to see actual repricings, right? They only trade at about, I think, 10 times forward price to earnings, which, me, I don't like looking at price to earnings, but when you're looking at forward price to earnings for such a great company, it's just tough to say. I'm not under the impression that it's going to turn as violently as people are projecting, and I'm not under the impression that it's going to be anytime soon, and the only way it will turn is if the demand for this goes, which, guys, it's not going anywhere. So that's kind of the first one. The second one I would like to talk about here is, the parabolic move we just had. The stock is up over 500% on a 1-year basis, right? Let me just go back to this chart here. Over 500% on a 1-year basis. And even some Wall Street analysts are now using language like, it could be coming to an end, quote unquote, about the HBM trade. Parabolic moves give back, 15, 20, and even 30% at a clip, even inside an intact uptrend. We saw this last week when Micron hit, $600, just about $650 or $680 around there, from an $800 price action, right? So it was crazy. It was down almost about 120 to 150, just off of inflation worries, right? Not even any structural issues related to the company. So if anything comes out around that, it's going to turn quickly. But like I said, guys, I don't think the turn can happen as badly as everyone's thinking. It just doesn't make sense in my mind. Then again, I'm just one quote-unquote analyst, one person, not financial advice. Do your own due diligence. It's just my opinion. Number 3, as you can see on screen here, China and Korea. That's a big one. SK Hynix and Samsung, they're not standstill, right? They're not binary. So new high bandwidth memory capacity is actively being built, and pricing power requires this oligopoly of, the 3 big boys, SK Hynix, Samsung, and Micron, to stay intact, right? And if any of the 3 players get aggressive on volume, margin compresses quickly. So we need these guys to stay smart, not oversupply, and not compress their margins. Because if they oversupply, margins compress quickly, and then we get the issues of the cyclical nature of memory. But the honest take here is, yes, the structural story is real. And yes, guys, today's move is justified by the news, in my opinion. But you don't chase parabolic moves, right? You wait for pullbacks, you kind of scale in, and you size positions, assuming the cycle eventually rolls over. Even if that's 2 years away, you don't want to, just go all in, kind of be a silly bag holder like you see on these Reddit guys. No, we're smarter than that over here. We invest, we don't trade. But, you know what I'm saying? I think high bandwidth memory still has a lot of room to run. And I think this is just the beginning. I think the UBS guy knows something, maybe. I think he's been watching stocks with Noah, so that's why he probably gave the price action of 1,600. But anyways, guys, bottom line, today was absolutely historic. It was an absolute historic day for Micron. Kudos to them, and kudos to the entire company for doing such a great job. They just crossed $1 trillion. So, Wall Street officially re-rated it from a cyclical memory name to potentially a specialty product creating AI infrastructure name, And, the super cycle thesis that we've been building on this channel for about 2 months now just got its most explicit Wall Street validation yet. The trade is real. The framing hasn't changed. The framing has changed in the minds of everyone, right? But valuations are stretched. The move is parabolic, as we know. 20% moves don't happen often, but it's a very parabolic move. And discipline matters more now than it did 6 months ago. Okay, we don't want to get caught with our pants down, but we want to be smart. We have to understand the risks to, reap the benefits, right? And if you found this breakdown useful by any means, guys, make sure you smash that like button, hit subscribe, drop a comment letting me know if you're holding Micron, if you're trimming, if you're staying on the sidelines, what you guys think. And where is your price target for Micron? I'm curious. Yeah, guys, I read every single comment. I don't get many, so, I read every single one. But appreciates all the love I've been getting on the videos recently, really motivates me to keep going. By the way, guys, just want to reiterate, nothing in this video you see is financial advice. Do your own research, size your positions. I'll see you guys in the next one. Make sure you guys stay in the green, stay smart, and God bless. Take care, y'all.